Hi, it's Cliff. The topic for this video is agnosticism. What exactly is agnosticism? First, we have to understand the root of the word, um, which comes from the word gnosis, which means knowledge. Agnostic means lack of knowledge. So if somebody's claiming they're agnostic, they're claiming they have a lack of knowledge in a particular field. For example, most atheists are actually agnostic atheists, that they are atheists because they don't see any evidence for God. They're not saying they're atheists because they have all knowledge and they know everything, and so they know that God definitely does not exist, but they're making a rational assumption that there's no evidence for God, so they're not going to live off of the premises of something that they don't have an evidence for. Well, for example, there's theist, theistic leaning agnostics, which lean towards believing in a god or a deity or a higher power, but have the humility to acknowledge they actually don't have the evidence to know for sure. Now, most Christians or Muslims, for example, claim they know. So that would be a Gnostic theist in a sense, but in my opinion, they're just delusional. So they're not really Gnostic theists, they're just delusional because they don't have an evidence for such belief. Now, uh, let's going on to my belief. I'm halfway between a spiritual leaning agnostic and an atheistic leaning agnostic. For example, reason I would say, in some sense, I'm a spiritual leaning agnostic. There are so many antidotal types of evidence. I can't think of the word, that haven't been proven in like scientific papers, but there's a lot of personal stories of people seeing ghosts and whatnot. Stories of somebody killed in battle, and at the same time their mother, waking up 1,000 miles away in a panic and knowing something's terribly wrong. So things like this make me come to the conclusion that there's probably a lot more in extra dimensions and such that science has not yet discovered. But to make the assumption that it's supernatural, I think is a mistake. I believe that most of these things science will I wouldn't say catch up, but discover more dimensions and just broaden our understanding as science has always done, especially in the last 300 years. But I don't see any evidence for a all, knowing personal deity. So I'm a spiritual leaning agnostic in the sense, not that I believe in the supernatural, though it's a possibility. I don't assume it is. But I believe there's things that science does not yet acknowledge, but will discover. But I do not believe it will probably not be a supernatural explanation, just because all other supernatural explanations previously so believed, when science has discovered a naturalistic view, those spiritual slash religious views have went away. But I believe science is obviously an ever expanding field and will continue to grow. Now, regarding agnostic atheism, I don't see any evidence for a personal being. But I can say, and so I'm not a Gnostic atheist because I don't know. But there's one sense where I am a Gnostic atheist in one field. The Christian and deity and the Muslim deity, and various pagan personal gods, um, their belief, their characteristics. For example, in the Bible and Quran and different mythologies are so contradictory and make such sweeping claims that have no evidence, that actually have contradictory evidence. For example, a Christian God's a loving God, but on the other hand, he created a situation where people are going to sin, and he's so angry that he has to punish his son for it. And there's so much anthropomorphizing in all these things that all these claims are so ridiculous and lack common sense that I can say I'm a Gnostic atheist to crazy bullshit. But on the other hand, um, I can't say I'm a Gnostic atheist to some, you know, like deism, like a deity who, you know, tinkered with the universe millions of years ago and let it go on its own. There's no evidence for such a belief, but there's no evidence against. But there is evidence against the modern day mythologies of Islam, Christianity, and the ancient mythologies. There's evidence against them. There's no evidence against, such sweeping changes of the universe as a conscious being or whatever. There's no evidence against it, but there's no evidence for it. So please comment on this, and my beliefs are still ever changing. I used to actually be, in my mind, a Gnostic spiritualist, because I would, see balls of light flying around, and they would talk to me telepathically and stuff like that. But now that I'm starting to go to mental health counseling and figuring out that I have schizophrenia, and I had a father that, my mom divorced when I was an infant. He was not abusive, but it was because of mental health issues, and my mom had to take care of my older sister and myself. So, that was that. And he had schizophrenia, and there's a genetic component to it. And so I'm realizing my strong belief in the spiritual world before was contributed by schizophrenia. Now, of course, there are strange things like so now I'm an agnostic, leaning spiritual in the sense that I think science is going to expand above what it is right now, and not agnostic atheist because there's no evidence for stuff. But now there's other things like people having near death experiences and stuff. I've never had one, but a lot of people have, and there's a lot of questions about that. There's a debate: is it lack of oxygen in a dying brain? Maybe. Or is it the actual leaving of the human body? I don't know. Science will eventually answer that question, I'm sure of it. And I really don't know. I would like to know, but it's all good. So I'm actually, you know, trying to ever expand my mind and go on an ever expanding journey. So it's all well and good, but I had the bravery to acknowledge that my delusions and hallucinations were not evidence for this supernatural. They're just evidence for an inheritable mental brain disease, a mental illness that has to do with brain chemistry. That's genetically inheritable. That was the basis for my belief, and since I know what's going on, I no longer hold a delusional belief. So I'm happy that I'm less delusional, because all these spirit guides and hallucinations were talking to me telepathically, saying, we're going to give you superpowers and stuff, and all these crazy things, like I'm going to be able to fly out of my body at will, and that shit never happened. So I started questioning, is it real? And apparently it's not. And so I'm okay with that, all well and good. And on the other hand, And on the other hand, I'm happy that um, I'm realizing what's going on, so my life has more clarity now. And and also I realizing this was generated in my brain, so my schizophrenia was pretty mild actually, in the sense that it wasn't causing me to have problems in interacting with the world. And as soon as I started realizing that it was from schizophrenia, and these delusions, um, I asked my spirit guides, okay, one of my spirit guides, okay, what's up? Why are they all? Why am I realizing that you don't exist? And this also is evidence that was generated in my mind because, he told me strongly telepathically. And I know this is not real. He's like, well, it's because I don't exist. I'm like, well, that means you're freaking generated from my own subconscious somehow. So that's cool. So I'm glad my life has more clarity and I'm enjoying learning about myself. So you all comment down below and have a good evening.